The alien ship drifted in silence near the edge of a dying star. Its hull was scarred, its engines weak, and its lights flickered as if they too were afraid. Inside the command chamber, only one being remained alive. His skin was pale, his breathing slow, and his eyes filled with fear. He was not just any alien soldier. He was once a commander of a proud fleet, but now he was only a survivor, hiding in the shadows of his own broken ship. He reached out with trembling hands to the recording device. His voice cracked as he began to speak. "This is my last message," he whispered. "If you find this, listen carefully. Do not attack the humans. Do not provoke them. Do not think they are weak. If you make them your enemy, they will never let you go." His words echoed through the empty chamber. For a moment, even the machines seemed to listen. The commander closed his eyes and remembered the day it all began, the day his people first believed they could conquer the humans. At that time, he was full of pride. His fleet was the strongest in the sector. His species had crushed many worlds, enslaved many people, and forced weaker races to kneel before their flag. They believed humans would be the same. Easy prey, a simple victory. But he had been wrong. Deadly wrong. His memory drifted back to the first time he saw Earth's soldiers. They were smaller compared to his kind, fragile-looking, and armed with weapons that seemed primitive. His officers laughed at them. His soldiers called them soft creatures. Even he, the commander, believed the war would be over in days. They attacked a human colony world without hesitation. The first battle was quick. The aliens struck hard, and the humans fought bravely but were outnumbered. Many were killed, and the colony was taken. The commander celebrated that night. He thought the humans would surrender, that they would beg for mercy. But no human begged. No human kneeled. They looked at their enemies with cold, steady eyes, and then they disappeared. Days passed. Patrols searched the colony streets. The humans were gone. No bodies, no prisoners, only silence. That silence was the beginning of fear. The commander remembered one of his captains reporting that soldiers were vanishing from the patrol units. At first it was just a few, then it became dozens, then whole squads. When they searched, they found nothing but empty armor, blood trails, and strange marks carved into the walls. "They are hiding," his officers said. "They are running." But the commander was not sure. The silence of the humans felt heavy, like the air before a storm. He tried to ignore the feeling. He told his men to stay strong, to laugh at human tricks. But deep inside, he felt something he had never felt before. Unease. Fear. Now, alone on his dying ship, he finally understood what that silence meant. The humans were not running. They were not hiding. They were watching. They were waiting. He leaned closer to the recorder, his voice shaking. "They are hunters," he said. "Not prey. Hunters. Once they decide you are their enemy, they will never stop. They will chase you across stars. They will strike when you think you are safe. They will not forgive, and they will not forget." He paused, as if hearing a sound in the distance. For a moment, he thought he could feel them again, close by, just out of sight. His hands shook as he forced himself to continue the message. "We thought we were powerful," he said bitterly. "We thought numbers and weapons made us strong. But strength means nothing to them. They are patient. They are clever. And when they fight with everything. Mind, body, and soul. They don't see battles the way we do. They see wars as hunts. They mark you. They track you. And then they take you piece by piece until nothing remains." His eyes filled with tears as he thought of his lost soldiers. He remembered the screams in the night, the sudden attacks, the way human shadows moved like ghosts in the dark. His people never saw them coming. They never understood how humans always knew where to strike. Even now, he could not explain it. All he knew was that once the humans began their hunt, there was no escape. He clenched his teeth, forcing the fear into words. "Do not fight them," he said. "If you value your life, if you value your people, do not make them your enemy. They will follow you. They will break you. And they will never, ever let you go." His voice cracked again, his throat dry. But he kept speaking because this was his only chance to warn others. He looked at the recorder as if looking into the eyes of someone who would find his message. "I beg you, hear my warning. Do not mistake silence for weakness. Do not mistake kindness for softness. The humans may appear small, but inside they are storms." The ship groaned around him as power drained away. The commander knew he did not have long. He sat back in the chair, breathing heavily, his body trembling from exhaustion and fear. He had seen the truth. He had survived long enough to understand what his species had never believed. He had lived to carry the message. That was his only victory. He closed his eyes and whispered one last sentence. "If you ever meet the humans in battle, run." The recorder clicked as it saved his words. Outside the ship, the dying star flickered, casting shadows across the alien's pale face. Somewhere in the darkness, he thought he heard movement. A whisper, a step, a shadow that did not belong to him. His eyes opened wide with terror. "They found me," he gasped. The recording ended, and the ship drifted, silent once more, carrying his final warning through the endless night of space. The memory of the first contact never left him. It began not with fear, but with pride. His fleet had been strong, 100 warships armed with the most advanced weapons in their empire. They entered the human colony system with banners raised, confident in another easy victory. From orbit, the blue and green planet below looked peaceful, almost fragile. Cities spread across the land, lights twinkling in the darkness of space. It was the kind of world they had conquered many times before. The commander had stood tall on the bridge of his flagship, his soldiers shouting in excitement. "Another conquest!" they cried. They believed the humans would surrender without a fight, that they would tremble at the sight of alien warships blotting out the sky. The first shots rained down on the human colony world. Energy weapons tore through. Defense platforms and orbital cannons exploded in fire. Alien troops descended to the surface, armored and armed, spreading across human cities with brutal speed. The battle was fierce, but short. Human soldiers fought hard, but they were outnumbered and their technology seemed weaker. Their rifles fired metal projectiles, primitive compared to plasma cannons. Their tanks rolled slowly compared to alien hovercraft. Within hours, the aliens crushed resistance. Streets burned, ships lay in ruins, and the alien banner was raised above the human colony. The commander watched from orbit and declared the planet theirs. His officers celebrated. His soldiers laughed. To them, it was proof once again that their empire was unstoppable. The commander, too, felt proud, but something unsettled him. He remembered looking down at captured humans. They did not cry. They did not beg. Even in chains, their eyes were steady, cold, and filled with quiet fire. He ignored it at first. To him, they were defeated, and a defeated people posed no threat. He did not yet understand. Days passed. Alien troops patrolled the streets, securing the colony. Factories were seized, homes taken, and human leaders imprisoned. But something strange began to happen. Small groups of humans vanished. At first, officers thought they had fled into the wilderness. Searches began, but no traces were found. Then alien patrols started to go missing too. A group of 12 soldiers entered the ruins of a human district and never returned. Their armor trackers showed movement, then silence. When scouts investigated, they found only blood on the walls and strange markings scratched into the stone. One symbol repeated many times, a handprint smeared in red. Soldiers whispered that it was human blood. Others whispered it was alien blood. Fear spread quietly, though commanders dismissed it as human tricks. The commander told his men to remain calm, to believe in their strength. But more patrols vanished. Supplies went missing. Nights grew longer. Soldiers reported hearing voices in the dark, whispers in languages they did not understand, and always, human eyes seemed to watch them from the shadows. The commander tried to investigate. He ordered prisoners to be questioned. Some humans were brought before him, tied in chains, their faces bruised. He demanded answers. Where are the missing soldiers? Where do your people hide? But the humans only stared at him. They never spoke, never begged, never gave him the satisfaction of fear. Their silence was worse than screams. It was as if they were waiting for something, as if they knew more than he did. One night, alarms echoed through the colony base. Explosions tore through storage depots. Fires spread across the landing zones. Alien soldiers rushed to defend, but they found nothing, only empty streets, smoke, and silence. Yet dozens of ships had been destroyed, and hundreds of soldiers were missing. How could primitive humans do this? How could people with simple rifles strike at the heart of an alien army? The commander could not answer, but deep down, he began to feel a weight in his chest, a cold fear he had never known. The humans were not fighting like other conquered races. They did not throw themselves into hopeless battles. They did not surrender. They waited. They watched. And when they struck with precision. His officers argued among themselves. Some demanded harsher punishments, mass executions, total destruction of human cities. Others said they should retreat before the humans destroyed them all. The commander silenced them. He refused to admit weakness. His empire was strong, and he could not let fear spread through his ranks. But at night, alone, he could not stop hearing the whispers. His dreams filled with shadows, with human eyes in the dark. The worst moment came when they found one of their own generals. He had been captured, though no one knew how. His armor was torn away, his weapons gone, and his body was tied upright in the middle of a ruined square. His eyes were open, but there was no life in them. Carved into his chest were words in the human language. We are still here. The commander felt his stomach twist when he saw it. He realized then that humans were not just resisting, they were hunting. Each move they made was calculated, patient, designed to break the will of the invaders. He remembered hearing one of his youngest officers whisper, "They don't fight for victory. They fight for revenge." The words haunted him. Even now, sitting alone on his ruined ship, he could still see those carved letters. He could still feel the chill of human eyes watching from shadows. At the time, he did not understand the full danger. He thought it was only resistance, a rebellion that would be crushed. But now, looking back, he knew it was the beginning of something much darker. It was the beginning of the hunt. The silence was worse than battle. After the first clashes, after the explosions and fire, the humans seemed to vanish. No attacks, no movement, no sound. For the alien commander, that silence was not peace. It was a shadow that grew heavier every day. His fleet remained in orbit, and his soldiers held the colony below, but the victories felt hollow. Every night, more patrols failed to return. Every morning, more soldiers were missing from their posts. There were no bodies, no signs. Of struggle, only absence. The commander walked the halls of the colony base, listening to the whispers of his men. They tried to hide their fear, but he could hear it in their voices. They spoke of footsteps in the dark, of faces glimpsed at the edge of vision, of human eyes glowing in the ruins. At first, he dismissed these as tricks of the mind. Soldiers under stress imagined many things, but when entire squads of veterans vanished without a sound, he began to feel the same unease. He ordered scanners deployed, drones sent into the ruins, ships placed on constant watch. The machines reported nothing. The sensors showed empty streets, silent buildings, and cold night winds. Yet the soldiers continued to vanish. The commander remembered the first time he saw the fear in his officer's eyes. A captain entered his chamber trembling, holding a helmet. It was cracked, the visor shattered, and inside were deep claw-like scratches. "We found this near the power station," the captain said. "But the soldier who wore it is gone." The commander examined the helmet, and for the first time, he had no answer. He sent more troops to search, but they too failed to return. The silence deepened. Days turned into weeks, and the colony seemed to belong more to shadows than to the aliens who claimed it. Human prisoners remained quiet, refusing to speak or look afraid. The commander visited them often, demanding answers, but they only stared. Their silence felt like mockery, a message that spoke louder than words. He began to notice strange patterns. Supplies went missing in ways that made no sense. Food vanished from storage even though guards stood watch. Weapons disappeared from armories locked with codes only his officers knew. When he questioned the guards, they swore they had seen nothing. He changed the codes, replaced the locks, stationed more men, but the thefts continued. It was as if the humans could walk through walls. More troubling were the messages, carved into walls, scratched into metal, drawn in blood. Always short, always chilling. "We are near!" "You are not safe." "We see you." His soldiers tried to erase the words, but they always returned, written in new places, closer and closer to the command center. The commander stopped, sleeping. He spent his nights watching the monitors, listening for signs of movement. The base was quiet, but sometimes he thought he heard whispers in the vents, footsteps above the ceilings, faint tapping against the walls. He told himself it was his imagination, but in his heart, he knew it was not. The silence was not empty. It was waiting. His fleet in orbit began to suffer the same fate. Small ships went dark. Crews disappeared. A destroyer lost contact, and when another ship moved to investigate, they found it drifting. The crew was gone, every one of them. No signs of struggle, no signs of escape. The ship was perfectly intact, but empty. The commander received the report and felt the same cold, weight press on his chest. It was not war anymore. It was something else, something older, more primal. The hunters had become the hunted. He called his officers together, demanding explanations. Some argued that humans had outside help, that another empire must be supplying them with advanced technology. Others insisted humans had powers they did not understand, that they were not normal beings. The commander silenced them, but he felt the same questions in his own mind. How could such a young species fight like this? How could they strike so precisely, so quietly, with weapons so simple? There was no answer, only silence. One night, alarms blared across the colony. Soldiers rushed to their stations, weapons ready, but no enemy appeared. Instead, the lights flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed the base. In the confusion, screams rose from the barracks. By the time lights returned, a dozen soldiers were gone. Their bunks were empty, sheets still warm, but the men had vanished. The commander's rage grew, but so did his fear. He shouted orders, punished guards, executed officers for failure, but it made no difference. The humans kept coming. Not with armies, not with fleets, but with shadows and silence. The colony began to rot from within. Soldiers refused to leave the base at night. Patrols walked in fear. Morale collapsed. The commander stood at the center of it, watching his mighty fleet and proud army crumble without a true battle. In his heart, he began to understand what the silence meant. It was not weakness. It was patience. The humans were not fighting for land or victory. They were hunting, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And the longer the silence stretched, the more it consumed his soldiers, his ships, and his mind. He looked at the stars above the colony and wondered where the humans were hiding. Were they in the ruins, in the forests, in the skies? Or were they already here, inside his base, watching him even as he asked the question? He could not tell. The silence gave no answers. It only promised that something was coming, something his fleet was not prepared for. The silence before the storm. The change came quietly, almost invisible at first, but once it began, there was no stopping it. The alien commander realized that the war was no longer theirs to control. His soldiers were not marching forward in conquest anymore. They were shrinking back, hiding inside their own walls, moving only in groups, whispering instead of shouting. The mighty invaders had become prey. It began when the commander sent a squad of 40 soldiers into the ruins to investigate strange signals. They were well armed, armored, and prepared. Hours passed, and there was no response. When a rescue team went after them, they found only 20 helmets arranged in a circle, their visors cracked open, blood dried across the ground. No bodies, no weapons, nothing else. Soldiers whispered that the humans had taken them alive. Others said the humans left the helmets behind as a warning. The commander stood over the circle and felt the truth pressing on him. This was no battle. This was a hunt. His men grew restless. They no longer trusted the scanners or the drones. They no longer trusted each other. In the mess halls, soldiers sat with their weapons in hand, glancing at shadows, jumping at sudden noises. They spoke in hushed voices about human footsteps following them in the night, about seeing movement out of the corners of their eyes. The commander tried to hold order, but he knew fear was spreading like a sickness. The silence of the colony was broken only by screams in the dark, followed by the crack of gunfire, followed by silence again. When dawn came, patrols were smaller. When night returned, patrols stopped leaving the base altogether. That was when the humans grew bolder. They no longer attacked only the edges. They came closer. One night, alarms rang as human explosives ripped through the outer walls of the base. Alien soldiers rushed to defend, but the attackers were ghosts, appearing, striking, and vanishing before they could be seen. The walls were rebuilt, but the damage was done. Fear had sunk deeper. The commander ordered heavy weapons, stronger defenses, constant guards, but it did not matter. The humans were always there, unseen but always present. Ships in orbit reported the same fate. Patrol craft vanished without a trace. A cruiser was found drifting, its crew gone, the bridge smeared with handprints. A battleship swore it saw. Small human vessels darting in and out of asteroid fields, but the scanners detected nothing. The humans were everywhere and nowhere at once. The commander began to understand their method. They did not fight head-on because they did not need to. They stalked their prey. They studied. They waited until fear weakened the enemy, and then they struck with precision. The aliens, who once thought of themselves as hunters, were now the ones being studied. The roles had reversed, and the commander could feel it in every shadow. He remembered an officer who had once called humans weak, soft creatures. That same officer now refused to sleep, his eyes bloodshot, his hands trembling around his weapon. He muttered to himself, repeating, "They're coming, they're coming, they're coming," until he finally collapsed. When medics took him away, they found deep scratches across his armor, as if he had fought something unseen. The commander could not deny it anymore. The humans had turned the war into a hunt, and his fleet was the prey. Worse, his soldiers knew it. They could smell it in the air. Fear made them reckless. One group disobeyed orders and tried to flee the colony in a stolen transport ship. The commander watched from orbit as their ship broke atmosphere. For a brief moment, he thought they might escape. Then the ship exploded in a flash of light, ripped apart by mines the humans had planted in orbit. All that remained was fire and silence. The humans had predicted even desertion. There was no escape. Panic spread faster than orders could contain. Soldiers whispered of ghosts, of shadows that could not be killed. They said the humans were no longer soldiers at all, but monsters wearing human faces. Every night, more went missing. Every day, fewer returned from patrol. The commander, once so proud, now walked his ship with heavy steps. His officers no longer spoke of conquest. They spoke only of survival. And in their eyes, he saw the same fear he felt in his own heart. He tried to rally them. He shouted speeches, reminded them of their empire's greatness, demanded loyalty and courage. But his words were empty. Even he no longer believed them. The truth was written in every vanished soldier, every empty ship, every blood-stained wall. The humans were not weak. The humans were not prey. The humans were hunters, patient and relentless. They stalked in silence, struck with precision, and vanished into the dark. The commander sat alone in his chamber, staring at the stars beyond the window. He knew those stars hid the hunters. He knew they were watching him even now. He whispered, to himself, the truth he could not say aloud. We are the hunted now. The commander soon realized that what terrified him most was not only the silence, not only the shadows, but the strategy that slowly revealed itself. The humans were not fighting with strength because they did not need strength. They fought with patience, with planning, with minds sharper than any blade. They studied every weakness of the alien fleet, every habit of the soldiers, every blind spot in their defenses. The commander saw it happen piece by piece. At first it looked like small accidents. A supply convoy was delayed, then ambushed in the night. Patrols disappeared on paths that seemed safe. Communication lines were cut in ways no scanners could detect. At first he thought it was luck, coincidence, but soon it became clear. The humans knew everything. They knew when supplies were moved, when patrols were sent, when ships changed position. They were watching. They had been watching since the first day of invasion. The aliens' greatest strength was numbers, but humans broke numbers apart. Instead of fighting fleets, they targeted fuel ships. Instead of facing armies, they hunted officers. One night, the commander discovered that 3 of his most important lieutenants had vanished. Their bodies were later found displayed in the ruins with their insignia carved away. Without them, soldiers grew confused. Orders were lost. Discipline broke down. The commander tightened his grip, but every time he moved to fix one weakness, the humans struck somewhere else. It was like playing a game where the enemy always knew the next move. The strategy was ruthless. The humans never attacked where they were strongest. They never gave battle unless it was on their own terms. They attacked supply depots, fuel stations, comm relays, and medical tents. They struck at the heart of the fleet not with direct fire, but by starving it, breaking it, and letting it rot from within. The aliens had advanced technology, ships that could burn cities, weapons that could level mountains. But what good were those weapons when soldiers were too hungry to fight, too afraid to march, too broken to follow orders? The humans understood something the aliens had never faced before. War was not about who had the bigger gun. War was about who could survive longer. War was about willpower. And humans had more willpower than anyone the commander had ever seen. He watched his once proud soldiers become nervous shadows of themselves. They clutched weapons at all times, but their eyes gave away the truth. They no longer believed in victory. They only believed in fear. And the humans fed that fear. They left messages carved into walls. They left symbols painted in blood. They whispered over comms, hacking into channels, repeating words like hunters calling out to their prey. Sometimes the voices were calm. Sometimes they were mocking. Sometimes they were just a single chilling sentence. We see you. The why. Commander could not stop them. He tried to outthink them, tried to predict their movements, but every time he set a trap, it failed. The humans never walked into obvious danger. Instead, they set their own traps. A team of alien soldiers once chased a lone human figure into the ruins. The figure disappeared around a corner, and the aliens followed with laughter. Moments later, the ground collapsed, swallowing the entire squad into a pit lined with explosives. The screams echoed through the comms, and the figure reappeared on a rooftop, staring down before vanishing again. The aliens were supposed to be the masters of war, but they were being led like blind cattle. The commander grew desperate. He doubled patrols, then tripled them. He increased firepower, ordered constant scans, sent drones into every tunnel and cave. It did not matter. The humans still struck. They adapted faster than machines, faster than commanders, faster than anyone. Every time the aliens changed tactics, the humans changed too. It was like fighting an enemy made of water. Impossible to crush, impossible to hold. One by one, ships fell silent. Supply lines crumbled. Morale vanished. The commander sat in the darkness of his ship and admitted the truth to himself. The humans were not fighting a war. They were orchestrating a hunt. Every move, every attack, every whisper was designed to weaken the enemy step by step. The aliens were trapped in a net they could not see, a net woven with silence, patience, and fear. And worst of all, the commander realized, the humans were enjoying it. They were not desperate rebels. They were predators who had found new prey. He remembered the faces of the humans who stared at him when captured. Cold, steady eyes that showed no fear. Now he understood what he had seen in them that day. It was not weakness. It was calculation. It was hunger. And now his fleet was being eaten alive by that hunger. The humans had a strategy, and it was simple. Break the enemy's supplies, break their leaders, break their spirit. Then close in for the kill. The commander whispered the truth to himself in the empty chamber of his ship. They are not soldiers. They are hunters. The commander no longer trusted his own senses. Every corner of the base, every shadow on the ship felt alive. The humans had become invisible enemies, striking not only with weapons but with the mind. The soldiers whispered of voices in the dark, whispers that came through comm systems even when they were shut off, footsteps echoing in empty halls, shadows moving where no one stood. The commander tried to convince himself it was only fear, but he too began to hear them. At night, when he sat alone in his chamber, he heard faint tapping on the walls, like fingers tracing metal, and sometimes he heard his own name spoken in a voice that was not alien, not machine, but human. His men broke faster each day. Soldiers once proud and disciplined now jumped at the smallest sound. Some fired their weapons into darkness until their energy packs ran dry. Others refused to sleep, staring wide-eyed at the ceiling, claiming they felt human eyes watching them from above. A few simply vanished, gone without a trace, their weapons and armor left neatly behind as if they had walked willingly into the night. The commander punished deserters, executed officers for cowardice, shouted until his throat was raw, but nothing worked. Discipline was dead. Fear was the only law now. The humans did not need to attack in numbers anymore. They only needed to let fear do the work. Strange signals began to appear across the fleet. Messages that seemed random but carried hidden meaning. Sometimes the words were simple. "We are here." Sometimes they were cruel. "You are already dead." Once, the commander's own voice was played back over the comms, repeating his ayah's words of command in twisted echoes. He knew humans had hacked the systems, but how could a primitive race with simple weapons cut through the technology of an empire? It was impossible, and yet it was happening. One night, a battleship sent a distress call. The commander rushed to the comms, demanding answers. The voice that replied was not alien. It was human, calm and cold, speaking in their language, but translated clearly. "Your soldiers are ours now." Then silence. Hours later, the battleship was found drifting empty, its crew gone, its systems shut down, its walls marked with hundreds of handprints. The commander stood in the dark bridge and felt something he had never known in all his years of war: helplessness. His empire's power meant nothing against an enemy that could not be seen, could not be stopped, could not even be understood. He remembered his officers telling him humans were simple, emotional creatures. He realized now that emotions were their strength. Fear, rage, hope, all of it gave them power. Where his soldiers collapsed under fear, humans grew stronger. Where his officers lost control, humans became sharper. The unseen enemy was not only outside in the shadows, it was inside the minds of his men. Paranoia grew like fire. Soldiers accused each other of being traitors, spies, or even humans in disguise. Fights broke out in the barracks. Some turned weapons on their own comrades. One night, an officer shot 3 of his squad mates, screaming that they were whispering human words into his head. The commander executed him, but the damage was done. The army was tearing itself apart. The unseen enemy did not need to strike at all. The humans had already broken them. The commander tried to escape the weight of fear by working endlessly, studying maps, drawing new plans, seeking patterns in the chaos. But the more he studied, the clearer it became. The humans had no single base, no fixed army, no obvious target. They were everywhere and nowhere. They moved like smoke, like shadows, like nightmares. He could not fight what he could not see. He could only wait for the next blow, knowing it would come from where he least expected. The worst night of all was when the humans entered the base itself. Alarms screamed, lights flickered, and gunfire echoed through the halls. The commander rushed to the command chamber, shouting orders, but no humans were captured, no bodies found. Yet dozens of soldiers were missing, pulled away in the chaos. When the lights returned, every screen showed the same image: a human face, pale, silent, eyes staring directly at the commander. Then the screens went black. The commander's hands shook as he realized they could reach him anywhere, any time. There was no safe place left, not the base, not the ships, not even the deepest chambers of his flagship. His men begged for retreat. His officers whispered that the war was lost, but the commander knew retreat was impossible. The humans would follow. They would never let go. He stared at the stars beyond the window, knowing the humans were out there, hidden, watching, waiting for him to break. He whispered to himself, his voice hollow, "They are not fighting us anymore. They are inside us. They are the unseen enemy." And with that thought, he knew the hunt was far from over. The end began with fire. The commander knew the humans were closing in, but even he did not expect the scale of their assault. For weeks they had stalked in shadows, striking with whispers and traps, but now they came like storms. Explosions tore through supply depots, fuel stations erupted in flames, and communication towers collapsed into the dust. The colony that had once stood as a proud banner of conquest became a battlefield of chaos. Soldiers screamed through broken comms, calling for reinforcements that would never come. The humans struck everywhere at once, small groups moving with precision, appearing from tunnels, sewers, and rooftops. Each attack was sharp, brutal, and final. The aliens fired wildly into the dark, but the enemy was never where they expected. Panic spread like wildfire. The commander stood at the heart of the chaos, shouting orders that no one followed. His men no longer believed in victory. They only wanted to survive. Ships tried to lift from the surface, but missiles hidden in the ruins struck them down, turning them into falling fire. A cruiser broke orbit to give cover, only to be boarded by humans who seemed to appear from nowhere. Hours later, the cruiser drifted in silence, its guns turned against its own fleet. The commander's eyes burned with fury and fear. He ordered the remaining ships to gather, to form a line, to hold one last position, but the humans had already broken the spine of the fleet. Fuel was gone, ammunition low, soldiers exhausted. In desperation, he ordered the civilians of the colony destroyed, hoping to draw the humans out by forcing them to defend their own people. Bombs fell, buildings burned, but the humans did not break. Instead, they came faster, harder, more merciless than ever before. His plan had failed. Instead of fear, he had given them rage. Night fell, but the humans did not wait for daylight. They moved through darkness as if it belonged to them. The commander watched from the walls of the base as flares lit the sky and shadows darted below. He saw his soldiers firing blindly, screaming at every movement. And he saw humans slip past them, one by one, striking throats, cutting lines, planting explosives. The ground shook beneath him as half the base collapsed in fire. The commander retreated to the central chamber, his last stronghold, with only a fraction of his officers still alive. They swore they would die fighting, but their voices shook. Outside, the sounds of battle grew closer. The commander could hear human voices now, shouting orders to each other in their harsh language, not desperate shouts. Calm, focused, ruthless. The voices of hunters closing in on their prey. The doors trembled as charges blew against them. Smoke filled the corridors. Soldiers coughed, choked, and died. The commander raised his weapon, ready for the final fight. He knew escape was impossible. The fleet was broken, the base destroyed, the empire far away. No reinforcements would come. This was the last stand. The doors crashed inward, and the humans entered like shadows with steel. They did not roar, did not taunt, did not waste a word. They simply moved, firing with precision, cutting down soldiers with brutal efficiency. The commander fired until his weapon burned his hands, but it was useless. His men fell one by one, screaming, begging, some throwing down their weapons. But no mercy was given. The humans showed no mercy. They fought like predators delivering the final kill. The commander felt a blast throw him against the wall, pain ripping through his chest. He tried to rise, but his strength was gone. Through the smoke, he saw the humans moving closer, their faces masked, their eyes cold and steady. For a moment, he thought they looked less like men and more like shadows given shape. He tried to speak, to beg, to reason, but no words came. Only fear. The humans did not strike him then. They surrounded him, weapons aimed, silent as the grave. One of them leaned closer, and though he could not understand the words, he felt their meaning burn into his soul. This is the price. Then they turned and left, leaving him alive in ruins, surrounded by the dead. He fell to his knees, the silence heavier than any weapon. His army was gone. His fleet was gone. His pride was gone. All that remained was the truth he could no longer deny. The humans were not prey, not victims, not weak. They were predators, and his people had walked willingly into their jaws. As the fires burned around him and the screams faded into silence, the commander knew this was not just a defeat. This was a lesson. The last stand of his army was nothing more than the beginning of their endless hunt. The commander sat in the ruins of his base, his armor broken, his hands stained with the ash of his soldiers, and for the first time in his long life of war, he felt the true weight of defeat. Around him the fires still burned, crackling through, metal and stone, and the smell of death hung thick in the air. The humans had left him alive, not as mercy but as a warning, and he understood that now. They wanted him to carry the truth back to his people, to make sure no one else would make the mistake of underestimating them. His officers were gone, his fleet destroyed, and his empire far away. All he had left was his voice, and so he began to record. His words were heavy, broken, but they carried the truth. He told of the first battles, how they had thought the humans weak, how they had laughed at their primitive weapons, how they had expected to crush them quickly. He told of the ambushes, the shadows, the whispers in the dark, the way fear spread, faster than any weapon. He told of the soldiers who vanished without a trace, of the voices on the comms, of the human face that stared from every screen. He spoke of the cruiser that fell silent, of the base that burned, of the last stand where his people died one by one under the silent gaze of human hunters. He described the way the humans fought, not with numbers or power, but with patience, cunning, and relentless will. He said they never stopped, never gave up, never forgave. He said they did not fight for conquest or pride, but for survival, and that made them unstoppable. His voice cracked as he admitted what no commander of his empire had ever spoken before, that the humans were more dangerous than anyone had believed, more dangerous than any empire could imagine. As he spoke, his eyes wandered to the bodies of his soldiers, the empty eyes staring into the smoke, and he felt the shame of failure pressing into his chest. But deeper than shame was fear, the fear that even his words would not be enough, that his people would not believe him, that they would come again and make the same mistake. He leaned closer to the recorder, his voice trembling as he whispered the words he wished he had listened to before the war began. Do not attack the humans. Do not cross them. Do not think they will let you go. Once you are their enemy, you will never escape. He sent the message across every channel, every frequency, to ensure it would reach the Empire. And when the transmission was gone, he sat in silence, waiting for the humans to return. But they did not. They had left him alone with his fear, knowing it would last longer than any wound. Days passed, and no rescue came. The commander grew weaker, his wounds unhealed, his strength fading. He wandered the empty halls, stepping over the broken armor of his men, and each step echoed like the ghosts of his army following him. Sometimes, he thought he heard human voices again, soft, mocking, reminding him that they were still watching. Perhaps they truly were. Perhaps they had never left. One night, he climbed to the highest point of the ruined base and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, his empire waited, and somewhere out there, the humans were already moving, already planning, already hunting. He knew his message would be received, and he prayed his people would listen, but in his heart, he feared it was too late. The humans had tasted victory, and predators never stopped once they had found prey. He fell to his knees beneath the stars, whispering again and again the same words, as if saying them would make them true. Never attack the humans. Never attack the humans, never attack the humans. In the silence of the ruins, his voice was the only sound, a broken echo of a warning too late. And far beyond the wreckage, hidden in the shadows of the stars, the humans watched and waited, their message already written in fire and blood. The message reached the Empire weeks later, carried by broken signals that traveled across the void, but when it arrived, it spread through every channel like a plague. In the Grand Council chamber, the leaders of the Empire gathered, their proud banners hanging above them, but the pride in their faces was shaken by the voice of their own commander speaking in fear. They listened in silence as his broken words described the battles, the ambushes, the endless hunt, and they heard the terror in his voice when he whispered the warning, "Do not fight the humans. They are not weak. They are not merciful. They will never let you go." The chamber erupted with arguments, some laughing in disbelief, calling it a trick, a human lie to weaken them, while others sat pale and quiet, realizing no soldier of their kind had ever spoken in such fear unless the truth was undeniable. A High Lord slammed his fist against the table and declared that the Empire had survived for centuries and crushed hundreds of enemies, and that no primitive species from a small world could change that. But another lord spoke softly and said the commander was not a weakling, not a coward. He had been one of their strongest, and if even he was broken by these humans, then perhaps they faced something new, something far worse than they had ever known. The debate raged on for hours, anger and fear twisting into the air, but beneath their words was the shadow of doubt that none could escape. They had lost fleets before, they had lost worlds before, but never had they lost their pride. Never had they heard their own commander beg for his people to listen. Across the empire, soldiers heard the message too, and whispers began to spread through the barracks and the ships. Some laughed, but others lowered their voices and spoke of old stories, tales of humans that had been dismissed as myths. Tales of wars fought on Earth long ago where humans destroyed each other with fire and storms and yet kept fighting. Tales of endurance that seemed impossible. Fear spread faster than any weapon, and once it entered the hearts of the soldiers, it could not be stopped. The Emperor himself, a figure wrapped in golden armor, listened to the recording in his private chamber, and though he spoke no words, his hands tightened on the armrests of his throne. He knew the truth. Though he would never admit it aloud, these humans were dangerous, perhaps more dangerous than anything his empire had faced before. Still, pride was a heavy chain, and the empire was bound by it. To retreat, to yield, would be to admit weakness, and weakness was death in their world. So he gave the order to prepare another fleet, larger, stronger, filled with their greatest warriors, and he promised the empire that this time the humans would be crushed. But in the silence of the chamber when the order was given, not all of. The generals bowed with certainty. Some lowered their eyes, hiding the fear that burned in them, fear that this was not the beginning of victory, but the start of something they could not escape. The survivor, broken and near death, had done what the humans wanted. He had spread the warning, but whether his people listened or not no longer mattered. The humans had already chosen their path. Even as the Empire argued and prepared, ships were already moving in the dark, silent hunters drifting between the stars, listening, watching, waiting. And when the new fleet launched with banners blazing and weapons ready, they did not know that the humans had already marked them, had already studied them, had already prepared their traps. The Empire thought they were marching to victory. But in truth, they were marching into the jaws of predators who had been patient, who had been silent, who were ready to strike again and again until nothing was left. And across the Empire, from the lowest soldier to the highest lord, the words of the dying commander echoed like a curse. Never attack the humans, for once you do, they will never let you go. The great fleet of the Empire sailed into the stars with banners shining and weapons ready. Thousands of ships moving as one, their leaders shouting words of glory and vengeance, but already their hearts were heavy with doubt. In the dark silence of space, whispers of the warning still lingered in their minds, and some soldiers asked themselves if they were flying to victory or to their own graves. The humans were waiting. They had been waiting since the first shot was fired, since the first insult was given, since the first arrogant empire thought them weak. Hidden in the void, human ships drifted like shadows, silent, unseen, listening to every channel, every command, every word of false confidence. When the fleet entered the first system, they expected open battle, but the humans did not appear. Days passed, patrols searched, but all they found were ruins, worlds left in silence, cities abandoned, and yet every ruin carried signs of struggle, signs of blood, signs of battles already lost. The soldiers grew restless, the commanders grew angry, but the humans remained unseen, watching, waiting, studying. Then the first ship vanished, no explosion, no signal, no trace, just gone. The second followed, then the third, then the fourth, until panic began to spread through the fleet. The commanders shouted for calm, claiming it was malfunctions, claiming it was tricks, but deep inside they knew the truth. The humans had come. At last, the humans struck in full, not with a grand fleet, but with hundreds of small groups. Hunters, with precision, tearing through supply ships, cutting engines, burning fuel depots, turning the great armada into drifting wrecks. The Empire fired blindly into the stars, missiles and beams filling the void, but the humans were always a step ahead, moving in shadows, striking and vanishing. The mighty fleet that had set out to destroy humanity became a graveyard of fire. In the command chamber of the flagship, the Emperor himself stood watching as reports of disaster flooded in. One by one, his ships were torn apart, his soldiers killed or captured, his pride shattered piece by piece. And then the humans spoke. Their voice cut through every channel, clear, cold, and merciless. They did not shout, they did not boast, they only spoke a single truth. We warned you. Every soldier heard it, every officer, every lord, even the Emperor himself. And for the first time in the Empire's history, silence fell over them all. The humans had listened to everything, had watched everything, had allowed them to build their pride only to tear it down at the moment of greatest arrogance. The Emperor clenched his fists, rage burning in him, but deep inside he felt the same fear that had broken the commander before him. He knew now what the humans truly were. Not just fighters, not just survivors, but predators that could never be stopped. They did not fight for conquest. They did not fight for honor. They fought to ensure no threat would ever rise against them again. And once marked as prey, no empire, no fleet, no world could ever escape. The flagship trembled as explosions tore. Through its hull, alarms screaming, soldiers running, and still the voice of the humans echoed through every channel. We do not forgive. We do not forget. You are ours now. The Emperor tried to give orders, tried to rally his forces, but his words were drowned in fear. Ships fled in every direction. Soldiers abandoned their posts. The great fleet crumbled before his eyes. And then the humans revealed their final truth. Across the Empire, on every world, on every station, human signals appeared on the screens. Faces masked in shadow stared out, silent, watching. The Empire had thought the humans were confined to a single world, a single system, but they were already everywhere, listening, hidden in the cracks of every system, waiting for the moment to strike. The truth wasn't that the humans had won a single war. The truth was that the humans had already spread like a shadow across the galaxy, unseen and unstoppable. The Empire was not fighting an enemy at its borders. It was fighting an enemy already inside its heart. The Emperor fell to his knees as the flagship shook with its final breaths, and he realized what the dying commander had tried to say. The humans were not a danger to avoid. They were a storm that could not be stopped. His last sight before the flames consumed his throne was the cold, unblinking face of a human mask staring back at him from the broken screen. Silent, merciless, eternal. And far beyond the wreckage, in the endless dark between the stars, the humans continued their hunt. Not for victory, not for empire, but for survival. And survival meant no enemy could ever be allowed to live. That was the final truth.